In this video, we're going to be talking about the skills report on our analytics. So in this report, you can get three different sub-reports. Skills practiced and skills analysis are two really great reports. The checkpoint report would be great for secondary teachers. There aren't a lot of checkpoint options at the elementary level, but at the secondary level, there are a lot. So you can also pull a checkpoint report. So in the skills practice report, that's going to give you an overview of what your students have done with all of the skills that have been assigned or all of the skills that they've been working on. This is really great for identifying some skills that maybe everybody in the whole class or a majority of your students need a little extra help on. It's also really good for identifying some trouble spots. The second report that we're going to focus on here is called skills analysis, and this gives you a good look at one specific skill and how your class in general are doing with that skill. This is really a great report for pulling small groups, maybe doing some group jams, or even pulling questions out to talk about with your whole class. So let's take a closer look at those in the IXL platform. So again, we're under analytics. And this time we're looking at the skills. So if I go ahead down here to skills, you can see here are the three reports. We're going to look at skills practiced. And in this report, you're going to get a look at all of the skills that the students have practiced within the last 7 days. Of course, you can narrow it down to specific students, to a specific subject, specific grades, or even change the time frame if you'd like. I'm going to stick with the last 7 days. So you can see I have 20 students who have been practicing, 57 skills that have been practiced, and then there are 9 trouble spots. If I click on that 9 trouble spots, it'll actually take me to the trouble spots report that we talked about in the last video. So if I have some specific skills that I've suggested that I want to look at, if I click this button, it's actually going to take down all of the skills and just to the suggested skills, which would really help narrow down what you've been working on, especially if you're suggesting skills. Because we're not very far along in the year, we don't have that kind of information to pull. So you can see here, I've got all of the skills that the students at Turl have been working on. I want to look at this one right here. This is actually kindergarten skills, comparing length, height, and weight. And you can see here I've got a little bar that shows how students have done. So I can see that I've got 2 students who have mastered it, 1 student who is practicing, and then there's 1 student who needs help. If I click this little arrow here, it's going to give me the breakdown of all of the students. So actually, this is the student who is not only practicing it, but also needs help. So when I said that this is a great report for pulling small groups or seeing how your students are doing in general, these 2 kiddos, they don't need any extra help. Their SMART score is 100 here. This friend, however, is struggling a little bit, and I know that he's struggling because there's a little triangle with an exclamation point in the middle. So you can actually, based on how students are doing, look at and see how many kids are in this area, how many of them have triangles, and create a group or a couple of groups based on that. So maybe you have a lot of kids that are sitting here in this practicing section, and maybe half of those kids need extra help. They're struggling. You can do a whole class group jam with those kids based on this specific skill and give them some extra practice. Maybe you only have a couple of kids in this practicing area that are struggling. You can create a small group and do a group jam with just those groups or those students. And then you can see over here, these are all the kids that haven't been practicing. So you can actually pull those kids aside and say, hey, look, I see that you haven't been working on these questions. Let's make sure that we're focusing on that. The second skill report that you can pull under skills is called the skill analysis report. And this actually focuses on specific skills that your kids have been working on. So measures length with objects. So let's say this is the skill I want to focus on. You can see here that this report is going to show me how many questions have been answered, how much time has been spent, and how many students who have been practicing it. For this particular report, I don't have a lot of information. I can see that none of my students have mastered it. And I've got 1 student who is at a level 1 in these questions. I can see that. So you could actually create, again, from this one, you could create more groups. So if I had several students that were in this group that were at a level 1, I could pull those types of questions and do a group jam with them and give them a little extra practice or even assign them. So it kind of gives you all the different levels and you can see where they're at.